Hello, everyone, and good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're signing in from. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Icon Exchange, an online content series that brings together the best and brightest minds in technology, design, and business to discuss emerging trends and their industry impact. Today's panel is entitled Beyond Greenwashing, and we'll discuss the future of sustainable design. My name is Belle. I'm a strategist here at Icon Mobile, and I'll be serving as today's moderator. Before we dive into introductions, just want to give a little bit of background into our panel format as well as the goal of today. So the goal of our discussion is really at baseline to just inspire and to educate. We hope that at some point throughout our conversation that you guys get to take away an insight or an idea or even a technology that you didn't know about before that can bring value and deepen the relationship that you have with your employees, your coworkers, your partners, clients, customers, right? As for the format, it's gonna be a three-part panel. The first one being, we're gonna take a few minutes for each of our panelists to give a little bit of background information on their professional journey and experiences. Then we're gonna transition into the panel itself. I will be asking some questions just to kind of guide our conversation and make sure we hit some of the high-level topics and trends that we want to focus on. And then finally, we'll finish out with a audience Q&A. It's about 10 to 15 minutes. For the attendees, you guys have access to submit questions at any point throughout the panel at the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Those questions will come to me personally. They are private, so I will be the ones screening those and asking them at the end of the Q&A. Sound good? Everyone ready? Perfect. Let's get started. So in addition to introducing yourselves, I'm going to ask each of you to share a key trend that you see that's really influencing how we see how we view sustainability today. So Faith, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Belle, and thanks for this opportunity to be with all these esteemed panelists. I pinched myself last night saying, oh my goodness, this is going to be a great panel. I'm coming to you live from my home office here, a little bit outside of New York City. I'm Faith LeGendre, and I'm passionate about all things sustainability and circular economy. And everybody said, well, when did that start? And I have this picture that I dug out from my dad's apartment. And it's a picture of me dressed in a large trash bag full of real trash. And I'm at my 8th grade science fair. And I'm doing my science fair project on who will take out the trash. And so I've kind of been fascinated with this idea since my parents took me to a landfill, and you know, I started to see where our stuff goes. And ever since then, I've been passionate about how might we design and do this thing called consumption differently and make it more circular and make it better for people, planet, and prosperity for all. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks so much, Belle.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Faith. Renee, how about you go next?
Great, thanks. And Faith, I applaud your your ingenuity in being a trash bag for your science fair. Well done. So I am the Chief Sustainability Officer at eBay. Prior to coming to eBay, I was at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and then about 20 years of consulting, mostly in climate change and life cycle assessment of products. At eBay itself, it's a unique company. We don't make things, but we really facilitate our sellers and buyers and connecting that sale online. So in terms of design, we may not have as much to put forward, but we do an awful lot with our own environmental footprint. We have a lot of social and economic programs that are part of our sustainability programs as well. And in terms of trends, I think I'm excited because climate's more my my expertise, to see the potential for some consolidation and potentially some real strength behind regulations moving forward with the change in administration in the US, and there's a lot going on in the EU already. So that is what I'm excited to see in the upcoming 2 to 4 years.
Sure. Thanks, Renee. Jennifer, how about you?
Hi, great to hear your intros and excited to be here. So I'm Jennifer Gutman. I run the sustainability programs both on the social and the environmental side at Williams-Sonoma Inc. So you may know us for our namesake brand, Williams-Sonoma, but we also have, a broad family of brands, including Pottery Barn Kids and Teen, West Elm, Mark and Graham, and Rejuvenation. So excited to be in an enterprise-wide role. And our social programs really encompass our commitments to ethical production and worker well-being. On the environmental side, the scope of my work is around climate and energy, responsible materials and finishes, and then also waste and circularity. which I know will come up here. So really a robust offering. In terms of trends, I think one thing that has really excited me is just to see the integration of sustainability into business strategy. I think we're entering a new age where maybe, something was seen as a side project, and now companies are really looking at this kind of creating strategic value, both for customers, investors, associates across the board, and the integration of the social and the environmental, that they're really pretty intertwined. And, this work runs deep. I had forgotten until Faith mentioned it, but I did a science fair project on the effects of acid rain on sandstone. So, kind of those commitments run deep, and excited to be here and learn from the panel.
Thank you, Jennifer. Robert, do you want to round us out?
That sounds great. And yeah, +1 to being on an amazing panel with some fantastic folks. Thanks for inviting me here. My name is Robert Little, and I'm an independent sustainability subject matter expert working for Adecco on-site at Google. And I focus broadly on the transition to the circular economy, kind of with both a focus on consumer goods and behavior, specializing on downstream waste management, but also looking at sustainable packaging design kind of upstream. So both ends of that spectrum. I've spent time teaching sustainability. I previously worked with PepsiCo on their global office of sustainability on packaging. Have a master's in environmental management from Yale, and I'm really keen on that kind of intersection of blossoming sustainable solutions, not just from this environmental perspective, but also from a fiscal perspective. I think you really need to focus on that in order to reach all the audiences, let's say. And in terms of trends, there's so much exciting stuff to kind of focus on. It's really hard to pick one or the other. But one thing that I'm really kind of keen on is seeing all these different large company commitments, despite the pandemic, to pick their kind of climate target and then go for it. I think this is a panel on greenwashing, so we have to be careful understanding what different commitments mean. There's carbon neutral, there's carbon negative, there's climate positive. There's a lot to unpack there. But even if the direction is not totally forged quite yet, I think that it's still a really exciting trend to kind of see, track, and hold companies accountable to.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone. So I actually want to get started by building off of the trends that you guys all mentioned. Jennifer, specifically, you talked a lot about weaving in sustainability initiatives into the business strategy. And so that's where I'd like to start. And I would like to know, we talk about sustainability efforts and goals and things like that, but what are the realities, right? So what are some of the hurdles that companies face when trying to implement these strategies or initiatives? And how is it really impacting business priorities? So Renee, I would love to start with you.
And a perfect question for where we are in our sustainability journey, which, as we know, never ends. We recently have been standing up a senior leadership council within eBay that will directly address how do we integrate sustainability more into our business. I think we're really fortunate. I mean, we are a purpose-driven company. We started by selling used laser pointers online 25 years ago. So already thinking about the circular economy before it was probably even a buzzword. The challenges, I think, are getting that senior support, but we're fortunate enough at eBay to really have it. And it really does allow for, I think, more significant contributions from the company, more buy-in to setting goals, be it net zero or 100% renewable and all the other ones that Robert was just speaking about. But I think without some of that senior support, it can be a lot tougher road to bubble up ideas and get the resources you need to accomplish them. And I think secondarily, the challenges we face are there's a lot of external pressure. And some encouragement as well from both our investors and our consumers. And we're always listening to what they're saying and trying to improve our programs and stay up with what's latest. So I think that's a good challenge to have, but one that we definitely we think a lot about and try to address regularly.
Sure. I know some in our previous conversations, Renee, we talked about, where does eBay play? You don't necessarily make the products you sell, and nor do you deliver them. So how does eBay play in this area of sustainability when you know that what you can actually influence is realistically limited to a certain extent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we take a good deal of effort in addressing our own footprint. So we do have a 100% renewable energy goal for 2025 that will power all of our data centers and offices. And that's an important part of making sure that we're taking as much of the inefficiency out of the digital platform that we have as possible. are related to that carbon reduction goals as well. But I think really because we do sell used products online, we are a very good case that you can point to around circular commerce. We encourage it. We have a goal around it specific to our sale of apparel and fashion, as well as electronics. And we measure that regularly once a year to see how much of our carbon emissions have been avoided because those goods have had a second life. So we really do try to integrate the circular commerce story directly into our business because it is part of our business. So it makes it a little bit easier to speak to what we're doing, I think, not just for ourselves to make sure that our footprint is smaller, but so that our customers' footprint can also be smaller.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks. Jennifer, do you have anything to build off of that? I know Williams-Sonoma was interesting. I was able to read some articles on what you guys are doing towards sustainability.
Definitely. I think we're professional problem solvers. There's no shortage of kind of hurdles in our work, and we benefit. Our model is really different. The vast majority of our product is designed and produced with our network of factory partners. So we have a lot of agency over the design and the materials, and I can speak to that more. But just to talk to some of the hurdles and the need for that, executive level direction and buy-in. Is just, one example that I have is our pilot circularity project, Pottery Barn Renewed. It launched last fall. It was really exciting. The first, circular pilot that was customer facing across our brands. And so, where we taking imperfect returns that need to be cleaned, repaired, working with a great partner, the Renewal Workshop, to get those back into customers' hands. And it was a super exciting program. And so kind of behind the scenes, what makes that work is my team, all our supply chain operations, our inventory planning teams. We have finance involved, we have merchants involved, we have creative team involved, we have third-party partners. There's a whole sort of data and technology and then operations and process, particularly when you're talking about a company of our scale. So really no easy feat to bring some of these programs to life. It takes so many different teams and cross-functional stakeholders and their perspective to do that both at scale and in a way that's really enduring. So that's a program I'm particularly proud of, and I think speaks to some of the push and alignment that it takes to get this off the ground.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of communicating, both of you, Renee and Jennifer, of like the teamwork it takes to really push this forward and build within. I know some of the things that I thought of was, having to transform existing processes, right? Like, so, you have something that you've always considered works, and now you have to shift those, whether that's finding new materials, sourcing them, maybe the price is different, maybe it's slower to market. So there's definitely real, there's reality to implementing these sustainability initiatives from a business standpoint. But I would love to switch over. Jennifer, you started talking about it, the idea of circular economy, knowing that 80% of a product's environmental impact is determined during the design process. What are some tangible ways that businesses can start to implement circular design to kind of help negate these effects? And Faith or Jennifer, I'd love to go to one of you to kick us off.
Great, I can start and then kick it to Faith. She's such a broad experience in this topic as well. So, we benefit our work because my team sits within sourcing and supply chain. So that's really kind of the heart of our work. We've been building this foundation since, 2005, 2006. I think what's interesting about our journey, and we have reports online, you can kind of read the stages. We really mapped that out this past year on our sustainability website, was, it started with paper in our catalogs, right? And then it sort of really influenced the whole organization. So sitting within sourcing and supply chain, our first commitments were around production and materials, responsible fiber. We have public goals, again, that help drive that momentum forward, around 100% responsibly sourced cotton, around responsibly sourced wood at 50%. Those are 2021 goals. They were long-term initiatives. And it really takes that long-term view because, it's not a matter of just turning on a switch. You have to have, an educated team across merchants, sourcing, everyone, design. You have to have a vendor base that has certifications. So we really work and rely heavily on independent third-party certifications to validate. There's a whole kind of back-end chain of custody documentation process. So it's not something easy to turn on, and it depends on a long-term strategy and having those solid long-term working relationships with your vendors. So really our focus started on materials and production, and actually this past year, as we're looking at our broader footprint, we've tracked and reported on the footprint of our operations since 2011 and have reduced it, but we actually looked at the broader footprint of our whole supply chain, what they call Scope 3. And that's everything from materials through production, transport, after we've sold it, its use in our customers' homes, and then what happens after its useful life. And like many retailers of our sort, the vast majority, 98% of our total impact is in that broader supply chain. And almost half of our impact is in materials and production. So, that was really validating to see all the work that we've done getting us along that course, and gives us the blueprint and the informed analysis to go forward with a strategy.
So what you're saying is that it's complicated. Oh, I'm just kidding.
It's complicated, and it's based on data, data and analysis, and it should always be kind of data driven. And I think people sometimes tend to think of, maybe a grayer space in sustainability, but I think the best, most fundamental programs are based, on data around customer behavior and data around, material contents, and really, using these facts to drive your strategy.
Sure, and it sounds also like what you're saying is, through your explanation, it was that sustainability leaders really have, I guess for a better lack of term, they have their hands in every single step of the process, right? So it's not just a sustainability eye from, a sky view. It's rather someone who has their hands in every aspect and every step of the way, and then also the transparency of each step and how those play all together. I mean, that's great. Thank you. Faith, do you want to build off of that?
I'm a fan. I'm actually a customer of both eBay and Williams-Sonoma, especially West Elm stuff. And I got the email the other day. I thought it was interesting because it was, my partner said, hey, look at this. They're leading with sustainability. And I just think that companies that use their platforms to not just, push product, but to educate around sustainability, that's a great way to do it. And so I was really happy to see that in there, and just kind of the education around it, and knowing, where your stuff comes from, if people are paid a fair and livable wage, if the planet was harmed in the making of something, right? And so it's nice to be a customer of both, knowing that I've got some nice items from eBay, and also I've sold a lot on eBay too. It's interesting because the other day my partner, we're cleaning out all our eaves and stuff, and he's like, no one's gonna want this. It's like 20 years old, this piece of technology. And I said, oh, no. Put it on eBay. And sure enough, there was a person that wanted to purchase this. Okay, we'll meet in the Burger King parking lot down the street, and they purchased it, and they said, I have been looking for something like this because I'm sending it overseas to Africa to my family, and it works perfect, with the technology that they have. So the things that we think maybe here in the US might not be technology that's, that we're using anymore, is still used in a lot of different developing worlds. So you never know, right? and there's some great uses as well for, I love the Pottery Barn with the second life there, and just that whole circular economy principle being extended around extending the life of an item. I think that's a really interesting concept to just really focus in on, like, as leaders in companies, and say, if we're designing this product, how can we make sure that this can have a second life? And it might be a totally different second life. It could be broken down and made into tires or something different. So really looking at that full spectrum of the life of that product is really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I know when we were talking about, like, what are some real ways that you can build sustainability into a product, this might seem so simple, but I read, I don't know if you guys have read the best-selling book called Nudge by Thaler and Sunstein, but they talk about, better decision-making and how we as developers, designers, the makers of certain products, how we can nudge people in the right direction. And I just think presets, right? Like, just when you get a product, when you purchase a product, if it comes in the most sustainable presets, you actually force consumers to opt out, which is like an extra, effort on their end. So I feel like there's definitely systems you can set up, like circular economy and reusing and all that kind of stuff, but also just very simple, ways that we can definitely encourage sustainable use of products. I want to actually, we got a question right now, and it has to do with circular economy, so I would love to ask it. And Faith, I'll start with you since you were the one who finished off here. Anastasia asks, one approach with circular economy is reuse, which we were talking about. However, managing inventory and existing products often comes with a somewhat heavy carbon footprint. So what is a good way to evaluate that trade-off?
It's interesting because there's something that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation put out as a report. It was a really long time ago. It was actually years back, and they talked about these three things. In order for reuse to happen, you have to know the condition, and you have to know like the match. I call it this matching thing, and you have to know the location. So I think if we use technology to do better matching. So right now it's kind of like we're in this infancy stage and we're just kind of crawling around and picking up our toes and waving around, right? It doesn't have to be that way. It can be really logical. I don't know all my neighbors in this neighborhood. I don't know what their needs are, but you know what? I might have a chair that I need to get rid of that they need, right? And there's platforms, like eBay and the Pottery Barn, the Second Life that you guys are doing. But I think it needs to be even more localized. And so when you have that local connection where you know that people in the area are in need of something, and I think it needs to be faster too, because people want things fast, right? So if you post and say that you need something, and then we use technology to do that match, and someone could say, oh, you know what, I have a chair, that I need to get rid of. And so it's that closer matching that will help us. I think it's more of those, like, I think we're getting back to also manufacturing more in the local areas, especially COVID has shown us that with these longer, more complex supply chains, it's a little bit riskier. So when we have more local, shorter supply chains and helping people in our communities that are our host communities that we're actually working and living in, will be really beneficial to helping reduce that carbon on the reuse model. I've also seen like Algramo, I like down in Chile. I know they're coming to New York and working with the Closed Loop partners, and they have solar powered mobile refill stations. And so the little cart comes to the apartment building, and then people go out with their laundry detergent bottle or dish soap bottle that's empty. And on their mobile app, they order the small amount that they need. They don't have to buy the whole amount that fills the container. And then the minute that they do that right in advance, and then the minute that they go up, it matches, and through that mobility in the app, and it just fills that amount that they need. So I think this type of technology, the technology will definitely help with this location and condition and matching that's really truly needed. Do you have Miwa, M-I-W-A in Europe, which I really love, where they have these stackable cups. You bring them to the store. They have a little technology piece on them, and through the mobile app, you order again what you need, and then you just go up to the bean machine, and it dumps out the amount of beans that you need, and then you go back home and use that same container. So it is reducing a lot of that packaging. Or you have like Lime Loop, which Chantel is a brilliant chief technologist doing great work around reusable shipping. And when you can use logistics that are already in operation, and you reuse these shippers, and so that when I drop my shipper off somewhere, maybe somebody else that's right there can use that shipper to put their pants into, and send their pants back, or something of the sort. So it's just, we're just not there yet, but with technology and with collaborating with people and this pre-competitiveness with the different organizations that are happening, and I know Robert can speak a ton to this kind of stuff because he knows a lot about these areas, I think we'll get there around reducing the carbon emissions with the circular things in motion, and really interconnecting those loops. So not just having a specific loop that just refills soap all the time, maybe you're refilling, something else. When I use my loop stuff, I send back my mango container, reusable container, I send back my body lotion. Like these two things, you'd never guess these two companies to go together, but right. I send it all back in one container, and then it gets refilled and it gets sent back to me. So in the same reusable shipper. So it's it's really about the collaboration, utilizing the technologies that are converging together to really bring down those interconnected loops.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Robert, I want to get to you because I know you haven't spoken much yet. I would love, I know Faith kind of almost shot it over to you already, but what kind of technologies do you see allowing current sustainable initiatives to really come to life? And then also, I'll throw you a second question. What do you see emerging, right? So like what new technologies, maybe as Faith said, aren't necessarily there yet, but you think in the next 5 to 10 years could really benefit this movement?
Sure, and thanks, Faith, for the kickoff. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to double click on the circular economy principles before we move on, though. I think this is something that we kind of like scratched at, but we can unearth a little bit more, right?
Sure.
I heard refill, reuse, repair, re-commerce, et cetera. There's so many certain ways to keep materials in use, and if you're looking at, let's say, Ellen MacArthur's circular economy principles of, starting with safe and healthy materials, right? We don't want to be recycling and mixing in materials that were never designed, let's say, to be recycled. Keeping materials in use includes all those different reuse and whatnot. Regenerating natural systems and kind of looking at, when we're doing business, how can we do better for business? And then one other part, which is just like, I don't think we spend enough time talking about, is the economy clause and circular economy. I always think about like, this is not just for the tree huggers and the earth folks. This is actual, business strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think about, Faith is a Loop customer, and she is, for better or worse, she is now hooked to Loop and is buying products from this company, from some of the top brands over and over and over again. And I hope that you love it, and it's not just a delightful packaging experience, but also that you're saving on your greenhouse gas emissions and footprints. I mean, to Anastasia's question, right? I mean, I was just looking at, there are so many different metrics for looking at environmental impact. It's not just your carbon footprint, right? The famous examples like the T-shirt that takes, between 1,000 and 2,000 gallons of water to make, right? The carbon emissions are one thing with the reverse logistics of fixing a shirt or whatnot, but you can talk to the Patagonia's worn wear folks and see that actually they're capturing not only value by repairing clothing and whatnot, but they're actually keeping those the clothing in reuse, and also keeping those customers as faithful customers. So, I always want the takeaway from skeptics to be like, this strategy is something that you can use to keep your customers excited, delightful. Nobody likes throwing away things they spent a lot of money on. I had to do that the other day where I had a water boiler that finally kicked the dust and I couldn't repair it. It was so wildly frustrating. And I wish that there was some opportunity to send it on a truck, and maybe all reverse logistics in some sort of mass shipment, so the per shipping impact would be really low for that water boiler and can keep that in use. Technology for the circular economy. One thing that I'm increasingly keen on is the kind of evolution that we're seeing. It's rather silent in life cycle assessments. So I know, Renee, you have much more experience than I do in this field. I've conducted one LCA on Tupperware once, and it was a doozy. It took me months. But increasingly, we're seeing technology be able to model your material choices and be able to showcase sort of the environmental impact before you do like, longitudinal, expensive, user testing and prototyping. I think that's one. And then Faith, you mentioned this, and I'm sure you can speak more to it too. It's just like the kind of growth of transparency and tracking. So the more that we can track these materials and products that we have and gain more information with smaller sensors and Moore's law with having things get like smaller and smaller and smaller, we'll be able to do a much better job doing that kind of inventory management, as well as gather data on when parts will fail, which parts will fail, kind of those predictive analytics that will enable things to be kept in use for a longer amount of time and allow you to kind of like, harpoon yourself to those customers and keep tabs on them. I think those are the two questions.
Yeah, definitely. Do you, and this is open to anyone, of course, have any of you utilized blockchain? I know kind of tracking and that transparency was something you brought up, Robert, but I was just wondering, is there, have you utilized blockchain in any of your initiatives at this point?
No, we definitely follow what's happening with blockchain, but my sense is kind of, especially in commodities like cotton, a large commodity, it's relatively nascent, that it's been, more effective in kind of like higher value gemstones, for example, supply chains. So it's certainly something we're interested in and open to, but not something we're specifically working with today. But kind of to hop onto Robert's, around the modeling, that is really important for materials modeling, and the impact is what you need to engage at the beginning of the design process. I think the complexity of these decisions should not be underestimated, that there are new materials coming onto the market all the time, and it's not all what it seems. And so it really requires digging deep, looking at a life cycle analysis, LCA, really thinking about, what are your priorities as a company? Is it the origin of the inputs? Is it the, extended life? It has to be, durable, commercially available. There's so many different aspects of kind of evaluating these materials. So in order to really have that be integrated up front in the design process, you need easy tools that allow designers to make these kind of judgments and qualifications as they're in the process.
With making sure the designers kind of know from the beginning, I was at a cosmetic company once and they were showcasing one of their platforms for the designers. And in the platform, it showed the designer, if you took this route, this is the impact on the planet. But they also, what I love is they built in this into their performance and their pay. So if they did the right thing, and they really worked hard on this design and it was sustainable and for the long haul, even after it was sold, they got a bonus in their pay, and they could kind of see those different avenues because it would show if you took scenario one and product design with this or product design with that, it would show you the impact on both the planet and on your wallet as a designer. So I thought that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna double click, as Robert said earlier, on the non-environmental side of the circular economy and circular commerce. Obviously, as eBay, we need for our sellers to be successful, for us to be successful. We don't compete against them, we work with them. Recently, and will be coming up soon, the launch of a new report around re-commerce, where we solicited input and surveyed our C2C sellers, so are not our large brand sellers, but our small, medium businesses primarily. And maybe shockingly or not, about 70% of our US sellers that responded said that they started selling pre-owned goods as a second income stream. So there's a real positive economic impact that happens from having the availability of these goods. We've also learned through some of this work that average US household has about $4,000 of stuff that they could potentially sell. And in the hard times we're facing right now with COVID, that was another reason that some folks decided to get on eBay and start selling where they might not have thought about it before, because there is also that economic benefit, and that's something that eBay is really really thoughtful about. As our purpose-driven company, we want to make sure that we are encouraging economic opportunity, and while at the same time, helping to reduce our environmental footprint. So I appreciate, Robert, that you brought that up as well. It's not all just the green stuff, but maybe the other kind of green stuff too.
Definitely. I mean, you're making me want to go spring clean my house now. Yeah, I know something building off of that, beyond just the green. So typically companies use something called a business model canvas to kind of break out what the needs and the opportunities are for individual product or service offerings. And now with circular economy, there's actually something called the circular canvas, which starts to bring in more at the core of design, where materials and what the environmental impact is. So you can definitely negate the environmental impact while still optimizing the business, right? The business potential. So there's definitely materials and a space that I think stuff is starting to grow almost like a snowball down a hill, as it might be small right now, but it's certainly building and will continue to build. Thank you guys for your insight on that. I really want to transition. So what we've talked about in design can be utilized for physical products, but also digital. I think we'd be remiss not to talk about our digital environmental footprint at this point, right? So in a recent webinar, Dr. Nathan Walworth was quoted as saying data is as important or more important than oil. And I think the point that he was trying to make is that data is really how we live our lives now and how brands build experiences, especially in this digital context. And knowing that we're well into the digital era, why is this not talked about more, right? Like, of course, there's some publications on major publishers' pages and stuff like that. But when we talk a lot about sustainability and the green movement, it's rare that you talk about your digital footprint. So I'm just wondering, what is your guys' take on why this is not like a forefront issue?
Yes, that's good. Yeah, I think it's important to talk about how we got here. So I grew up and really enjoyed taking black and white photography in school, and then I ran a darkroom in college, and I loved having the weight of my camera. There are 36 shots in my roll. I kind of line it up, I click, and I take it really seriously, because like I have a finite, amount of film in my camera. And like similarly, when I was, I would do videography, and importing the kind of footage into the computer would take a lot of time and take up a lot of memory, right? It's not too long ago that we were totally resource constrained with our digital kind of like lockers and whatnot. And these mega trends of dematerialization and miniaturization and putting things into the cloud has just kind of like, I think that people aren't talking about it because it's made things easier. It's not something that, it's, for me personally, it's made it less cumbersome for me to have data. It's made it less cumbersome for me to have memories and photos and all that kind of thing. That being said, right, I think it's important that we look at, let's say, the actual environmental footprint there. So when things are put into the cloud and whatnot, and our digital footprint grows, I think the stat that I saw was something along the lines of like, greenhouse gas emissions in total, it's between 1% and 2%. So not on par with airlines or things like that. I would much more push people to take a plant-based diet than to do their digital footprint. But I think that I guess a couple of other things here is like, number one, the transition to a circular economy is predicated on the energy transition, right? I know that a number of these big companies that will deal with our data have these massive conglomerate facilities, data centers that must be powered by renewable energy, right? Because it's only going to grow. Our data footprint is only going to expand and whatnot. So that's a key thing. Of course, like the cloud is not a place; it is a data center, and there are materials within the data center that are wildly important, right? There's there's only a finite number of critical materials on Earth. There's a wonderful study put out by Tom Gradle in 2015 that kind of looks at the criticality of minerals and whatnot. And if you look at it from an environmental angle, from a supply and risk angle, or from a political risk angle, it's not infinite, right? We can't just keep going over and over and over forever and expanding and whatnot. So I think that sooner or later, we will get to a point where we are resource constrained in that sort of way. I think that more on a personal level, the kind of like, why aren't people focused on our digital trash and our digital footprint? I think they are in certain spheres, right? How many times have you looked in your inbox for that one email that you can't find? How many times have you, looked on your desktop and been like, oh my God, I've saved way too many photos to my desktop and whatnot? From like a wellness angle, or from like a mental health angle, our digital trash is totally suffocating, and we totally hate it. So I am totally, in favor of the Marie Kondo, like, organize your house, organize your digital life too. There are so many things, and there's so many companies that are, fighting for our attention, and it only behooves us to kind of get a little bit more intentional about, all this, like, digital clutter from an environmental standpoint, and also just for our sanity. I think that we could do a lot. Yesterday I didn't have any meetings, so no meetings week at work. So I spent all day clearing my inbox, and it was so peaceful. And I think we could all do a little bit more of that for the environment and for ourselves.
Yeah, I know, Renee, you'd kind of mentioned looking at sustainable energy, for your headquarters and businesses. Can you explain a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. 2016 is when we signed up with RE100. So I think if you're in this space, you know more about the conversations that are happening, but just like I don't know a lot about orthodontia, right? Because that's not my world, but I know an awful lot about what's going on with cloud efficiency and data transfer and data transparency between companies like ourselves. We own one of our data centers, but the rest of them are what they call colos. So they are owned and managed by others. It's almost like leasing office space, really, but you're leasing digital space. And so what we are really careful about and conscientious about is when we enter into these agreements, understanding what their perspective is on sustainability, if they're supplying or at least purchasing renewable energy to help offset those digital footprints, and then we do the same on our side as well. And I mean, this has been going on for decades now. Technology continues to get more efficient, right? So the amount of energy it takes to compute the same amount of information 10 years ago is just a fraction of that now, which is part of the reason why we haven't completely depleted all of our resources yet. So there's a little bit of hope there, right, that we continue to become more and more efficient, not only in the way that our energy is being supplied by renewables, by wind, by solar. More programs are available for that, but apologize for the siren in the background. But also, making sure that the technology itself is keeping up with that efficiency, because it's not going to go away. I mean, we're definitely not going to stop being addicted to technology anytime soon. It drives a lot of companies. It drives our lives in many ways. It drives how we pick up food or don't pick up food anymore. So I think it's important to know that it is being talked about within renewable energy associations, within digital space associations, and how this information needs to be managed more efficiently. And how do we continue to encourage, not just in the United States, but in Europe, and especially in some of the emerging markets, access to renewable energy so that we can lessen that footprint.
That's perfect. Thank you. So we've talked about sustainability and design. We've talked about both from a physical product and a business, and then also from a digital footprint aspect. But I'm wondering now, bringing it all back together, have you guys experienced any trade-offs, right? Like, I mean, well, that might be an obvious question. Yes, there are trade-offs to this. When we look at the user experience or the customer journey or the customer experience, what are some trade-offs, like realistically, that you guys have seen? Do you think that these trade-offs are inevitable? Do you see us overcoming them? Do you think that things like, we're going to talk about the balance between responsibility and convenience, right, or quality. Do you ever see businesses having to give up some of those to, deliver on environmental responsibility? And Jennifer, I'll start with you, and then Faith, you can follow up after that.
Sure, yeah, I think actually we're seeing a sea change around that. I think maybe whereas that might have been a kind of misconception in the past, like design, quality, sustainability, durability, they are synonymous. We, have staked our brands on that and are really proud of it. I mean, that's why also we're pursuing independent third-party certifications, and it has a direct benefit on our supply chain, but also our customers. For example, GreenGuard, low emissions finish is, people want that in their home. And it's also better for workers. And Pottery Barn Kids has made a huge transition across all of their furniture to offer that. So I think that's kind of a past way of looking at it, that people are seeing it as synonymous. And I think this kind of relates a little bit to the digital waste piece. Is one thing that we work on and are continuously working to improve is how to humanize and make it personal. I think if people kind of have sometimes it seems like intangibles, you get overwhelmed with climate change, like how am I going to participate? But really translating certain decisions into particular metrics, like trees or miles driven or something that's tangible and relatable to a customer. I think the other piece is that as much as people kind of care about the world, they want a great selection. They shop for design and quality first, right? And we understand that as a brand, and sustainability is a layer on there. They want to see a wide assortment and selection. And I think what's exciting today is brands are offering that. I mean, a third of our products today represent one or more of our initiatives. And we're actively, significantly growing that. So when you think about kind of making a purchase and think of it less as a transaction and more as like, how do you retain the value of the product that you're bringing into your life? And, what's the resale opportunity? It starts to really change the economics of it. So I think that these things are actually more viewed going forward as synonymous than as in conflict. And that our job is to partner with the marketers. I'm certainly not the marketing team, but to really think about how do we convey the unique aspects, because it is complex. There is so much complexity to our world and the different certifications and what they mean. And it's important to be authentic and transparent, but make that real and relatable to customers to engage them in the journey.
Thank you. Faith, do you want to build off that?
Yeah, definitely, but I can't speak to the sea level at Williams-Sonoma, but I hear good things that are happening there through Jennifer, of course. When I can speak from a personal level, I know, and I didn't say my trend in the beginning, so I'd like to cash in my trend card now. And that's around, I think people will have an understanding, and they will actually have an environmental score. like you yourself, and I know it's a little Black Mirror, kind of episode thing, like you have social score, but you're going to have your environmental score. And I said this back, I think it was last year, year before at Columbia University, I was speaking. I said, I can't wait till the student comes home and says, hey, look, this is my environmental card. And that goes up right next to the report card, right on the refrigerator. And it gets calculated with the rest of the family so that when you save that email forever, how much carbon emissions is that taking on that data center? That how much packaging that you use because it was, it's being understood through your trash or your reuse system, and really understanding that, and then maybe making better decisions based on that so that we can evolve, because awareness is key. And right now, people don't know that like an email is sometimes equates to, depending on where it's being held, all the different networks that it went through, that it could equate to using a virgin plastic bag, single-use bag, right? So, and that's a, think of how many emails, and people send the email, the thanks email. I was like, please don't send that, because that's not worth it, number one, for our environment. So yeah, don't send the thanks email. The other thing too is just I know in my family, in my home, we look at all the stuff that we do, and we know that we can't be perfect unless we went and we lived off the land and we foraged and didn't farm. We have emissions, we have impacts, and so we make the decision to invest in some like carbon offsets, right, in entities that are aligned with our core values. People we know that are planting trees in different areas, or educating around sustainable and regenerative farming. That's important to us, and we try to offset our lifestyle. And I think that's a trend you'll see going forward. You see it now when you purchase something, you can offset the shipping by purchasing some carbon emissions. Now, I'm not saying to go out there and do whatever you want, right? And be this, litter and, use a bunch of packaging and a bunch of fossil fuels. But at the same time, we can at least maybe, if we have enough money to purchase that product, we should have an extra set of change, laying around, that we could purchase some better positive impact to offset that, that shipping or that tree that we cut down to make that stool. And I know myself as a customer, and I have these conversations with my circles, that we're willing to pay that little bit of extra money to do that, to be a responsible consumer. And I think that when the brands wake up to that and they start having that front and center on the emails, on the purchasing, where you're doing your shopping and consumption, I think that will be, that definitely, I think that will be a trend to take, personal responsibility for your own behaviors.
Sure. Yeah, Renee and Robert, I want to give you guys a chance to answer this too. Is like, how can businesses or brands partner with their consumers, their customers, their vendors to bring about a greener future? You guys have any final thoughts on that before we transition to the Q&A?
I can speak specifically to a pilot program we have in Germany marketplace platform, where we do have at checkout the opportunity to put a little extra pennies in there for contributing to offsetting carbon. And so having those options and opportunities and speaking to them directly on the platform as opposed to just on our corporate website, I think we have a lot more opportunity to explore there. You see more and more of it. I think it's becoming more comfortable. And we can't forget the whole demographic of Gen Z, right? There's a lot of momentum behind that particular demographic, and being more accepting and being more knowledgeable and being more cautious and conscientious about what they're purchasing and how they're purchasing it, and especially when it comes to the resale space. So, being at eBay, I think we've got a lot of opportunity to increase our presence and to give more options to both our sellers and to our buyers when it comes to acting eco-friendly or eco-consciously, or however you want to term it. I do think that's a trend that is definitely picking up, and one that we are really enthusiastic about.
Robert, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have a great partnership example in my back pocket right now. I did want to double click or kind of elevate Jennifer's comments though on just the sea change of kind of green at large, right? I think the elephant in the room always is the thing of okay, I'll get the green product, but it doesn't work as well, or it's not as efficient, whatnot. And it's because we've been scarred from when you bought that green cleaning product 10 years ago that wasn't that great, or you were so excited to get your plug-in hybrid that went 8 miles. But look at where we are now, right? there's been such a chunk. I mean, I'm sure there's graphs and whatnot that'll show the exponential growth in performance of sustainable technology and sustainable products. And I think that consumers are delighted with that. You know, I think about the example of, I was working with 7th Generation last spring on their Easy Dose laundry detergent container. And this is a cool product that I think consumers really enjoy. You know, not only does it have fantastic packaging and sustainability baked in and whatnot, but it enables you to squeeze the bottle and have the exact amount of detergent come out, so you're not wasting anything. And I think the consumers are increasingly loving that. Or like, you know, I can never tell who's the most profitable person. Is it Bezos or is it the guy at Tesla, Elon Musk? But you know, like our electric cars and whatnot, performance has gone unbelievably high, and the price to buy into that has gone far, far lower. I think that, you know, one principle I want folks to kind of walk away with, or, you know, one other example is, you know, working at Pepsi, I don't know if you all had seen the Sun Chips compostable packaging back in 2005 and whatnot. Super cool. You can industrially compost it, but if you crinkle it, it's like as light as an airplane or something like that. Just like nobody wanted it. Consumers were not ready for it. It wasn't a great performance product. And now there are, you know, compostable bags and whatnot. But I think that, you know, if you look into this, the normal standard distribution curve of like the early adopters, the innovators, they're really excited for this. Increasingly, our technology is enabling that wide spectrum of innovation and sustainability to become more compact. And as a result, often you'll see performance and sustainable products much outperform some of our traditional ones. And I don't think consumers are gonna, you know, turn back. Nobody's going back and say, I wish I had an Escalade with, you know, 8 miles a gallon or whatnot. I think they're saying, I want this sexy Tesla that goes 0 to 60 in, you know, 4 minutes or 4 seconds. So I hope that's the takeaway that people have.
Okay, so I know that we're a little bit over on time. I'm going to try and get a couple of questions. We actually had a lot that the attendees did submit, so I'm going to try and run through those quick. The first one is from Marty, and Jennifer, I'm going to throw it to you, and then maybe Renee, you can talk on this too. Greenwashing is all about what you tell the public about your environmental impacts. How do you decide what level of detail or granularity to share in your public reporting or disclosures? It's hard to differentiate between firms when their sustainability reports and websites all look the same. Beautiful graphics, aspirational policies, but very little data on performance. So how do you guys offset that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. And, you know, we actually just, our 2019 year end, which was our most recent corporate responsibility report, my team publishes, and we work with all our cross-functional stakeholders to pull together. We had more data and disclosures than we've ever had before. And I think, you know, to some degree that's true, but to some degree the data speaks for itself. I mean, you can see our energy footprint, you know, over the past 5 years and where we've taken it, and also looking at, you know, energy and carbon intensity, so how it's decreased relationship to our sales. So I think there's a lot going on in the space. We could have a whole other conversation around ESG, which is basically the acronym for environmental, social, and governance. And, you know, we're a publicly traded company. It's the term that investors are using to designate those, you know, classically sustainability or human capital issues that they see as financially material to your performance. So there's going to be convergence around how this stuff is reported. I would say, look at the data that they're releasing. You know, there's one thing to be investor facing, and it's totally different to be customer facing, and that's where we put all the information in our, you know, product pages. And I think kind of looking, are you seeing it in your, you know, shopping experience, or is it just a high level goal that you see there? So I think you're going to see a lot more standardization around data. And I would say, you know, look at those corporate responsibility reports. They're pretty long and detailed, but we were really proud to disclose more than we ever have before. And it's always a balance. I mean, I think that it was Renee who originally said it's a journey, right? Nobody's perfect. You're working on it. It's constant problem solving, and technology's advancing, materials are advancing, consumer expectations are advancing. So we're, you know, always tackling the next thing to move us forward.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Jennifer said. I think if anything, there's slowly becoming more consistency, especially around climate change and how companies report. There are other platforms, CDP being one of them, that most companies do report to voluntarily, and that is a prescribed survey. So there is some consistency there, but we have a long way to go. And we're getting asked for information from lots of different investors in lots of different ways. And so it's not always comparable. But I wouldn't overlook what's on the website. I mean, usually that data is assured or audited or however you want to term it. And we're trying to put the numbers alongside the stories, because how do you get there? What what went on behind the scenes to allow for those decreases to happen. And sometimes there's a people story that we want to also highlight as well, because while the environment is important, we need to make sure that we're also putting a human element into it, circling back on a conversation we had earlier. And I know we're really close to end time, so I will toss it back to you, Val.
Perfect, thank you. We probably have time for one more question, and this one's kind of fun, so I want to end it with this one. Today, there are very public acts, similar to here in LA, we have like beach cleanups, right? So there's very public acts that can be taken to help improve our environment. Do you see there being public digital acts where people can kind of come together to clean up their digital environment? Or do you see potentially almost an industry being built of private digital cleanup, almost like today's closet organizers? So Faith or Robert, if you guys want to talk, because you didn't
I know
really.
I've been in companies where we had those days where it was like, okay, we're making sure we're conserving server space and energy. So here's your chance. No meetings will be scheduled, and here's your chance to clean out and delete from the deleted box. Not just, people think that they just delete from the inbox and then it doesn't get used up any energy anymore. But no, it stays there in the deleted box. So just offering your employees. I think I consulted recently with an organization, and I said, where are, you're an online organization. They're like, oh, we're just so sustainable because we're an online organization. I'm like, well, where is your data center? Is that on renewable energy? And there's actual scorecards too. There's grades. Like they have a grade for Spotify, Netflix, and there's A through D, and you can see who's not doing so well. So that stuff is going to come to more light. And so I think, giving your employees the opportunity to reminders like, okay, this quarter we're cleaning everything out. Please delete everything. I think that's a good opportunity. And then again, I think it's a great opportunity for Marie Kondo to get out there and start to, hey, it's a new revenue stream for her business, right? She could do all this all from home. So definitely, I think it's also interesting too. I've been studying a lot around death, and with death, there's a lot around the digital trash and a lot of digital pollution, and also people don't understand. Like we had a person and her partner passed away, and they don't know how to access anything. So it's this whole thing around. I think you're going to see in the future where you'll see something like my partner, I call it the life portal, where it manages all of your digital stuff, tells you, your passwords, where everything is, how much data you have in there. And then upon death, if you have signed over in advance, it will pass off to your executive of the will or something like that, or your partner. So that way it's going to be managed very well. I think there's a great opportunity out there for Marie and a lot of the digital providers to start to help people manage all this much better.
Yeah, that was such an interesting insight, things that we don't think about, and that's the point of today's panel. So thank you guys so much for joining. Jennifer, Renee, Faith, and Robert, your insight and experience has been phenomenal, and thank you for sharing it with our attendees. And thank you guys for signing in and joining us. Make sure that we'll post highlights from today, key quotes and insights. We'll continue to post those on our social channels, so make sure that you follow Icon Mobile Group on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. So thank you guys. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.